Hello and welcome to the League One Lowdown Preview Podcast here on the Deck Network. I'm Callum, and as always, on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whenever you're listening to this, I'm joined by Sam.
Hello, Callum. How are we?
Not too shabby. How are you, man?
Yeah, all good. Looking forward to having some League One football back this week before we don't have any again next week because of my favourite thing, the international break.
Oh dear, don't get him started. Don't get him started. I love how we say hello, how are you, as if we've not been backstage ready to come on and do the podcast for the past 5 minutes, having a nice catch up. So, but there we go. Of course, no fixtures last week. So, Sam, do you want to go over those preview predictions that we do for the game that you seem to be doing all right at the minute? I've kind of come off the gas.
Yeah, so if you don't know, me and Callum do a predictions league. At the end of the season, the loser has to buy a shirt of the opposition team supported and wear it on the season review. That shirt will then be given away to a lucky subscriber or follower on our Twitter account, which is across the bottom. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you are subscribed if you would like to win the giveaway. So you get 3 points for a correct score and 1 point for a correct outcome. At the moment, I'm on 100 points and Callum is on 95. So it is very well balanced in the battle for the not buying and spending money on a shirt you don't want. And obviously, this will be the last preview show, so there won't be one next week because of my favourite thing, the international break, once again.
I'm sure we'll get on to that. There's a couple of games last night taking place. I think just the two of them, or 5 goals in total. It's just one. They all came in one single game. Burton 0, Crawley 0. Burton still winless. Crawley, I suppose, at a decent point going to the Midlands and coming away with a point. I suppose you take whatever you can at the bottom of the table, don't you? But Stockport 0. Wycombe Wanderers 5, despite such a small game week, I suppose, with only 2 games taking place. It's sent a mighty shockwave, hasn't it, Sam?
Oh, 100%. Obviously, Crawley picking up their first clean sheet, which is always a bonus. Burton now 13 games without a win and still managerless, which we'll get onto a bit later on in terms of who actually is going to want that job. In terms of Wycombe, though, it's a real statement of intent, isn't it? Obviously, we know they're a pretty decent side this season anyway. They can score goals for fun, averaging 2.4 goals a game. But to rock up at Stockport, only concede 0.15 XG to Stockport, who are pretty decent and handy going forward themselves. Knock up 2.5 XG. They look a really good outfit. And the key package for me is a player Bolton let go on loan to them is Aaron Morley. A player who I thought would have been in Bolton's first team this season and potentially competing with Josh Sheehan. But he's been their creator, along with Cameron Humphreys, who has been excellent as well on loan from Ipswich. They've got to be careful with the loanees, though, especially for January. They may well get recalled, as we know with loanees. Ipswich may see his form and go, you might be ready for Championship football, Cameron, and call him back. But hopefully, for Wycombe's sake, that doesn't happen. But Morley has, in terms of midfielders, in the 83 percentile for chances created, playing in that deeper role next to Josh Scowen. I personally think Aaron Morley's gone under the radar, as midfielders generally do. Everyone's talking about Kone and Udoa up front, as that's well within their right to. Udoa's second top scorer, and Kone, I think, is as well. But your midfielders always don't get recognised, I don't think. So Aaron Morley is a key clog in the Wycombe arsenal at the moment.
It's kind of put a break on Stockport as well. The 2 teams below Exeter have got 2 games now. I know not in the best run of form, and Charlton have also got a game in hand. You know, should they win that, Stockport are barely in the top half of the table. Considering we all thought they were, and it looks like, and they are still only 2 points off the playoffs. So I suppose it's probably not panic stations by any stretch of the imagination, but kind of. The gas is the foot has very much come off the gas, I suppose, for Stockport.
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously injuries probably haven't helped, and now they're integrating their new players. They've been a bit inconsistent the last 7-8 games. I think some of their problems have stemmed from the goalkeeper situation. The Stockport fans don't particularly rate Corey Adai. obviously he had an exceptional season at Crawley last year, but that was his distribution, shall we say, was the key fundamental part, not his shot stopping. And he's now gone up a league in a team that do concede chances, and his shot stopping ability is now becoming noticeable. They're having to outscore their opponents virtually. They've now conceded, obviously, 5 to Wycombe. They conceded 4 to Orient, and they haven't kept a clean sheet in about 9 games now. So alarm bells, especially defensively for Stockport. But as with any promoted team, there is going to be bumps in the road, shall we say? I still think if you offered Stockport probably 10th place at the end of the season, I think they'd be pretty happy with 10th place.
It's one of them, when you have such high expectations after the first, couple of rounds of fixtures, and then, it's always going to be a bit disappointing. But it's the short termism of football, isn't it? Everyone, if they have one bad game, it's all down the.
Yeah.
Everyone just forgets about it. The other game, I suppose, not really much to talk about. Crawley still in the relegation zone, level on points with Leyton Orient, only on goal difference, albeit Orient got a game in hand. But Burton, I suppose that the one positive to take is that they did get a point. It's not another defeat. We talk about it being a really bad start. They are only 6 points, and we know how much just a couple of wins can do for a side. Should a new manager come in, it's not abysmal. We're not even halfway through the season, so I suppose nothing to worry about. We'll get to the new Burton, who we could speculate as to be the new Burton manager. But for Crawley, I suppose, it's not a great result, but not a bad one. A point at a relegation rival is always going to be all right.
Yeah, especially away from home. I think away from home is where they have really struggled. Picking up any sort of points away from home is always a benefit for a team that's relying on their home form to keep them up, especially now we're heading into the crunch time in the season where there's so many fixtures, especially when you get to December. You've got 5 games over Christmas and New Year, so we're heading into crunch time when the pitches start digging up, the cold weather, the frozen pitches. So Crawley's home form, especially over the Christmas period, is going to be key to their survival. And picking up clean sheets away from home, yes, they didn't win against a relegation rival, but they didn't lose it. So it's a point in the right direction for Crawley Town.
And for Burton Albion, I suppose looking at the odds, which we probably know is not the best way to speculate for a new manager. But if you don't fancy either Neil Warnock or Leighton Baines at 33 to 1, of course, gamble responsibly. William Lundin, sorry, I'll get my words correctly there. Frederick Holmberg, Mark Kennedy, Tom Hounsell, and Gareth Ainsworth currently the top picks. I mean, we keep seeing Mark Kennedy linked to jobs. We'll get on to the Shrewsbury one as well in a moment. I mean, obviously he's got quite a connection to Lincoln. He did all right. Obviously, we know what Swindon's like. I suppose we'll leave that one to fourth tier fever to talk about, and I'm sure they do quite a bit. He was all right at Lincoln, steadied the ship, I suppose, and quite consistent at times. I thought. Whether he's the type of manager to be able to dig a team out of a bit of an issue, I don't think we've seen that from him yet. And you kind of want a manager who's going to command respect from the dressing room, and whether Mark Kennedy's that yet, I'm not sure personally.
No, I would tend to agree. I think out of them managers, I think they've just got to try and get Gareth Ainsworth. He can do one of his famous dances like he did when he went into QPR, try and rally the troops. But my point on Burton is what I made a couple of weeks ago is their recruitment was so scattergun that how many of them players, yes, they signed, 23 players or something, but how many of them were actually League One quality when they walked in the door? It's all well and good signing a brand new squad, but if 4 or 5 of them are League One quality and the rest are arguable League One or 2, it doesn't really work. And we had a manager who didn't have the best of spells in League One previously with Wimbledon. I think his record was now 32 League One games without a win. That was questionable from the start as well. You'd be a very brave man, I think, to go in at Burton at the moment. Obviously, they survived by the skin of their teeth last year. But we do have a question in Trivia Corner a bit later on Burton as well.
I suppose some managers might see it as a free hit. I mean, managers talk, don't they? Managers talk to boards and everything. So I suppose Some people might see it as just a free hit and see what happens kind of thing. We'll have to wait and see. Talking about clubs in search for a new manager, Shrewsbury Town. I know the review show talked about this earlier on in the week, but for what it's worth, I thought we'd add our 2 pence on this. Like I say, the manager's most linked to the job at the minute, if betting is anything to go by. Mark Kennedy again, 3-1. Gareth Ainsworth at 4-1. Liam Richardson 10-1, as is Gary Rowett, and Gavin Cohen, the Brackley Town manager, current Brackley Town manager, has also been linked with that job. If Gavin Cowan gets the job, I'd be amazed. I probably think that's more to do with the fact that he beat Braintree Town at the weekend in the FA Cup. And if you have a good FA Cup run, that does worlds for your managerial odds, I suppose. So, out of them again, you'd probably aim for Gareth Ainsworth, wouldn't you?
Yeah, 100%.
But
I saw some sort of rumour. There was some little rumours floating around that Shrewsbury were looking to be taken over by some American billionaire. Whether how they're true or not is another story, but American billionaires seem to be making their way into League One now.
Yeah.
And
Leighton Baines is available, apparently. Leighton Baines, there you go.
That would be a very Fleetwood approach to getting a new manager, wouldn't it? In terms of get someone who's not really managed a first team level, but it could pay off.
It didn't for them, but
Yeah. No, in terms of Paul Hurst, I feel he's a little bit hard done by, and he's not. So his record is his second spell at Shrewsbury. Obviously, he did exceptionally well in his first spell. 37 matches, 7 wins, 8 draws, 22 losses with a points per game of 0.78, which is sackable. Let's be real, that 100%. Is sackable form. But he wasn't helped by the recruitment in the summer. It was League Two worthy, maybe National League worthy, to be fair. They didn't sign a goal scorer, which they needed. They bought a couple of players in on loan who were quite decent. Castledine and Taylor Perry, decent players. But other than that, it's a League Two squad that had a League Two manager, to be fair to them. The next appointment is big if Shrewsbury want to stay in League One. Obviously, the bottom of the table, it's still starting to be a bit congested again. We've sort of kind of got two kind of leagues forming again, haven't we? We've got the battle for the top 6 and then the battle for relegation and mid-table. So it's important that they don't get stretched away. Obviously, their only 2 wins of the season have come against Crawley and Orient, where they won both quite convincingly in the end. They've picked up decent points against Rotherham and Bolton. So it's not impossible that they can show that they are a decent side. But on paper, their squad is probably the second weakest in the division behind Crawley.
And in terms of managers, I think we've been through the odds, but there's one that I suppose maybe the odds haven't even, either they've not considered or maybe there's so much evidence for it that it's not being even considered as bet worthy. Pete Wild has been reported by BBC Shropshire Sport, apparently, that he's rumoured to have applied for the job. Sam, you're the one that saw this. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad appointment. It's from Shrewsbury. He's obviously did a very good job at Barrow. Led them to a 9th place finish in his first season, which improved on their previous season of 22nd. And he left the club last season after missing out of the playoffs after a single point, which was a disappointing end to their season last year, after they were so close and in the top 7 for a mass majority of that season. Would it be a good appointment? Yes. I wouldn't say it's going to be a bad appointment. He's got a career win percentage of 42.9. Barrow wouldn't have had one of the biggest budgets in League Two, so he can work on a stringent budget. If they do go down to League Two, he's got experience at League Two and experience of doing well in League Two. I wouldn't say it's a bad appointment. It's not one that would blow your mind, if that makes sense. Like if they went and got Gareth Ainsworth or Gary Rowett, somebody like that, you'd be like, oh, hang on a minute. Shrewsbury Town doing good business. But it wouldn't be
whether they have I mean, I know you mentioned the American takeover, whether they have the financial package to, at the minute, to go after a big name signing. You imagine that a name like that probably isn't really pushing too much for a lot of money, as opposed that the likes of Ainsworth and Rowett probably would. So there's also, just the financial aspect of that to take into consideration, I imagine.
Yeah, it'd be a stable appointment, I think, of Pete Wild. He's never managed at League One, but it would be the right trajectory for his career. Did a decent job at Barrow, did a decent job at Halifax, I think it was where he was before. So who knows? He could go in at Shrewsbury, rally the troops. They finish 20th and stay up again, which is kind of obviously their aim at this point in the season now.
So we're going to go over the Friday night game, and then we'll do our trivia corner as we always do. And then we'll have an ad break, and then we'll go over all of Saturday's game just to break it up a little bit. But Friday's game, again, I'm gonna ruin my knowledge of the Northeast and say that I think this is perhaps a bit of a derby. I'm not hugely sure. They're both northern teams, so I say that like I'm not. I mean, Lincoln's sort of north, I imagine. So anyway, my knowledge of this area not great, but Barnsley against Rotherham is the Friday kickoff. I have two things to say on this. One, can we stop 7:15 games? Evening kickoffs are 7:45, and especially league games. I don't mind if it's in like the EFL Trophy or the National League, whatever it is. That's fine. Make it at 7 o'clock, 7:30. I want to go home. But Lincoln midweek was 7:15. Stop it. And this at 7:15 just feels all sorts of wrong. But both sides who were wins last time out, I know it's been a while in the league for both of them, but wins last time out, I suppose they're just looking to get that second win on the on the bounce to try and have a bit of home form.
Yes. So we've got a gap now forming, haven't we, in the league as well?
Yeah.
So the gap between second and third is now, I think, 5 points at the top of my head. But there is just 8 points separating third and 17th. Rotherham sit in 15th and Barnsley are in 8th. So it's now the battle in my head. The top two, Wycombe, look extremely good. Birmingham will win the league. I don't think anybody's going to deny that.
No.
So it is the battle for third to sixth. And these two teams probably eyed that at the start of the season. Probably more Rotherham than Barnsley, because Barnsley lost a lot of players, let's say, in the summer. But they've recruited pretty shrewdly. Rotherham had a complete squad overhaul with arguably a manager who is very good at getting the best out of League One players and likes overhauling squads. Got exactly the players he near enough wanted, got it all done early, and it's kind of just gone to crap near enough.
Yeah.
Obviously, Rotherham also lost in the cup last time out to Cheltenham, conceding 3. And I looked at their team, I thought, oh, maybe he's rotated the squad. Nope.
No.
He went full strength and then couldn't be bothered to do his post-match as well. So unless he got sent off in that game, which wouldn't put it past him. It's a big game for both teams, let's put it that way, in terms of Rotherham have been extremely inconsistent recently, and Barnsley's home form is a massive problem. If you want top 6, your home form has to be excellent. That's your number one fundamental. Your home form has to be excellent. Rotherham are probably looking at this licking their lips, I would suspect, with Barnsley's recent form. I think the FA Cup break probably come at a good time for both teams, in terms of Rotherham had to come off the back of a humiliating 1-0 defeat away. Just gives them a little bit of a break from the league. But I think Barnsley have enough pace in their team to cause Rotherham problems, which is my biggest problem with the Rotherham squad. It's so one-dimensional. There's no... Other than Malik Wilkes, I look at that team and it's like, you're all a bit of a lump, quite frankly. You're just kind of lumps of footballers who can't get around the pitch. And football's evolved. Football is a much more mobile game, especially in League One. 10 years ago, this squad would have been perfect for League One. Where even the Stevenage team had a bit of athleticism about it last year, which is probably why they did reasonably well with the one-dimensional approach. Barnsley have very dynamic footballers, especially in midfield, especially Adam Phillips now coming back from injury is a big one for them. Keelan Dunn, who is a player I rate exceptionally highly. And I think Barnsley will win the horrible timed kickoff game 2-1.
Yeah, that seems about fair. I'd probably go 2-1 as well. Just to, it's one of them you can't really see them keeping a clean sheet, but Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I think 2-1's a fairly safe scoreline to go within there. We're going to have an ad break now, but before that, Sam, we should have like a little jingle for this, shouldn't we?
We do need a jingle.
It's time for Trivia Corner.
We just need it to spin in the middle of the screen, don't we? I'm going to raise this in my next meeting. We need a
Brilliant
jingle.
Right, take it away. Take it away. Get your bow tie out and off you go.
I'm actually going to buy a bow tie now. We've got 3 questions this week, so I'm going to answer the questions. Leave your answers in the comment section of the YouTube channel. While you're down there, make sure you subscribe to the channel because there will be some giveaways later on in the season. Make sure you don't miss an upload as well. So leave your answers in the comments. So the first question is, if Burton fails to pick up a point against Shrewsbury, only 3 teams have had 5 points after 14 games in League One. Who are they? This doesn't include point deductions when teams are on -7, -6 and stuff like that. That's question 1. The second question is, with 29 points from 13 games, this is Wycombe's best start to a League One season. However, where would this put them in the league table for best League One starts since 2004? And the final question is, if Birmingham City were to win this weekend, they would have 32 points from 13 games, which would be the joint second best, along with Leyton Orient, Peterborough and Luton Town. But which former League One club got 33 points from their opening 13 games? So leave your answers in the comment section, and we will be back straight after this ad break. Okay, the answers for Trivia Corner. So the first question was about Burton. If they failed to pick up points, who are the 3 teams that have had joint or worse starts? They were Southend in 1920, Cheltenham in 23-24, and Bolton in 1920 season. And Bolton were the only other team without a win. The other 2 teams at least won 1 game. The second question was about the league table for Wycombe after our best ever League One starts. Wycombe would be 17th in a league table of best starts since 2004 in League One, which did surprise me. So 16 teams had better starts than Wycombe in 20 years. And the final question was, if Birmingham City were to win this weekend, they would have 32 points from 13 games. Which club got 33? The answer was Leeds United.
Brilliant stuff. Well done. If you got 3 out of 3 on that one, your reward is another podcast coming up very soon because you've clicked subscribe as you've gone to leave your answer in the comments. Let's move on to one of the lunchtime kickoffs. 2 of them. The first one, Wrexham against Mansfield, 3rd versus 4th. Is probably one of the games you'd actually rather be at 12:30. Watch this one be an absolute snooze fest. It's a side in Wrexham that you'd expect to be up there, but the stats don't back it up. And Mansfield, who you didn't expect to be up there, but the stats, I kind of want to say, back them up. At least the performances back it up. They have been, as much flack as I get for this on social media, which I don't think is justified. By the way, I've been quite positive about them recently. The performances, kind of back it up, other than that week that Lincoln City kind of just, I don't want to say ran riot over them, but 4-1 is quite convincing. They've not really had many off weeks, have they?
No, I think they're a pretty consistent outfit at Mansfield. So it's the battle of the 2 teams. I'm looking at the expected points table to my left. They're 2 teams that have the biggest differentiation in position. So this should be 15th versus 16th if you're a statistician. Jesus. I've created a new word if that's not a word. They should be both on 16 points. I think Wrexham have been a bit more found out than Mansfield have. I think Mansfield have plan A and plan B with the type of players they've got, especially going forward. Like you've got Will Evans, you've got Lee Gregory, and you've got Ben Waine. So 3 different types of forwards. So they can be a bit more flexible. Where Wrexham, I think they're extremely one-dimensional. Their football is much like a Steve Evans type game, but they have that little bit more mobility in their team, which like people like Elliot Lee, George Dobson, which does help them. I think the biggest fundamental change for Wrexham this year is obviously under Phil Parkinson. They've been an extremely goal-scoring team. So this year, their expected goals is 13.5, which is in the bottom third of the table. And I think the biggest argument is about Paul Mullen. Obviously, when he was at Cambridge, he did exceptionally well in League Two. He's got 30 odd goals, got them to promotion, and then left to go to Wrexham in the National League. We think mainly for money, but which I don't blame him for. I don't blame him for in the slightest.
Challenge, I suppose, but yeah.
Scored goals for fun in his 2 seasons in the National League. Scored goals for fun last year, and he's made another step up to League One and has got 1 goal so far this season. I know he was injured at the start, but he is their main. I know they've got Jack Marriott. I know they've got Stephen Fletcher, but he is their man that they rely on for goals. And so far, it's not happened.
No, it's one of them that it's not great. But at the end of the day, I know you always say that stats kind of balance things out, but they have got 25 points on the board, and I don't think this season was ever meant to be. I think a lot of Wrexham fans would have been kidding themselves if they thought they could get back-to-back promotions. I don't know the last time that was done. I imagine probably a Luton or something did it, but it's very rare that you see a team go from National League straight to the Championship without at least doing a double season in one of those divisions. So I think both teams are happy with where they are. In terms of this fixture, I don't know. I could kind of see it being a 2-2. I can kind of see it being a draw, but an entertaining one at that. I think both teams will kind of cancel each other out at points, but not in a boring way.
Yeah, I get. It's very difficult, isn't it? Because Wrexham are very, very good at home. They've won 5 and drawn 1 at home, but they have drawn their last 2 at home, I believe. Oh, they can't have because the website I'm using is rubbish. Then, and then Mansfield's away form is the 5th best in the league with 4 wins and a loss. So they're both teams that are very good home and away. I will go. I don't want to be the same as you all the time, otherwise this prediction is boring. I will go the Mansfield win, and I will go 2-1. I reckon Wrexham will win home game.
The other lunchtime kickoff, probably I suppose we've kind of talked about both these sides. It's very rare you get managerless side playing managerless side, so I suppose there's not really much we can talk about with this one because we kind of spent a lot of time on both these teams. Anyway, Burton against Shrewsbury. It's kind of like both teams need a win. And you imagine if Burton don't win this, then I mean the alarm bells are already already going. But this is Titanic sirens going. So I'd argue that Burton need the win more than Shrewsbury. Do I back them to get that result? I don't know. Is my point. They've played Crawley. Shrewsbury, I'd argue, are probably a bit worse than Crawley in terms of obviously league position is one thing. So I don't want to back Burton because I know they'll disappoint me, but I get the feeling they'll scrape a 1-0 win.
Okay, 1-0 to Burton. So if Burton do win, it'll match their points tally from 14 games in the 2022-2023 season where they had 8 points after 14 games and managed to stay up. So
I think I don't know why I don't know what it is about Burton. It's probably because I have a little bit of a connection to them. Obviously, that's where I was born, so I kind of don't want to see bad things happen to Burton. But if I had no connection to them, I'd probably think of them quite a bit more negatively than I am doing.
Okay, I've gone for a 1-1 draw. I think Burton's winless run will continue.
On to the 3 p.m. kickoffs. Then Leyton Orient versus Blackpool. It is, the two sides who are having a bit of a shocker at the minute, probably for different reasons. I mean, I saw you put something on X the other day that, the vibe in the Leyton Orient side still seems quite happy. I don't know how that's possible. They just seem to be really struggling at the minute. And I mean, you all know more than me, but there doesn't seem to be many signs of improvement. Blackpool, we know, struggling for probably other reasons. Obviously, Seaforth's not being there and whatnot. So probably different reasons as to why each side is struggling. So an interesting game, I think.
Yeah, so 2 really out of form sides, 2 wins in 12 between them. So in their last 6, each team have won 1. We know Orient, I mentioned on the last pod, are a very decent side out of possession. They don't concede much XG. They don't have many shots against. But when they concede shots, they usually end up in a goal, to be honest. And Blackpool, as we know, are a very good side going forward. They can score goals. They've got goal scorers in their team. They've got Cole Joseph. They've got CJ Hamilton. You've got Carey. You've got Rhodes. You've got Ashley Fletcher, who I don't rate that highly, but is a threat from set pieces. So really good going forward. The vulnerability is defensively for Blackpool, conceded 25 goals, which is the joint second worst. Only Peterborough have conceded more goals. So it could be quite an entertaining game. Orient are the lowest scorers in the last 7 league games, scoring only 2, which is rather alarming. So do I back my own team to beat Blackpool? The answer is no. Our home form is pretty shoddy so far this season. 1 win, 2 draws, 3 losses, but we don't concede many at home, conceded 7. And then Blackpool's away form is also average, shall we say. 2 wins, 1 draw, 3 losses, conceded 14 in their 6 away games, but scored 10. I will go for Orient scoring goals, but I'm going for a 2-2 draw.
Interesting. It's 20th against 22nd in the form guide. I will go with a 2-1 victory to Orient, I think. So we'll move
Last
on
time we
to...
did this,
Yeah.
Last time we did this, it worked wonders and we won. So I'm hoping it happens again.
Brilliant stuff. So Peterborough, Cambridge, moving slightly further north here. Interesting. Peterborough just don't seem to be able, like, if you talk about inconsistency for Rotherham, like we did earlier, Peterborough just seemed to be epitomising that. Loss, win, draw, loss, win, loss. Like, I don't think it's possible to be even more inconsistent. Cambridge, 3 wins in the back to back. So Cambridge are really the form side here, out of nowhere, which I don't think you'd have predicted. Cambridge actually ahead of Peterborough in the form guide by 2 points. So, in terms of this one, I don't know. I kind of want to back Peterborough, but I kind of back Cambridge on this one to win 3-1, maybe. Yeah. I don't know where that's come from, but 3-1, why not Cambridge? I think it'll be a bit of a mental game.
Okay, that's very interesting.
It is. And I look at the stats. I look at how many goals they've scored. They've not even, they've only scored 17 all season, and I think 4 of them came in a Blackpool game. So, but sometimes you get a vibe from a game, and there you go.
So the aura has returned, has it?
The aura has returned. I've abandoned stats.
So Peterborough's home form, they've scored 2 in every home game. Near enough, they've scored 14 in 7 home games. Where Cambridge's away form, they've won 1 and lost 5. But as you say, they have won 3 in a row, and they've won 5 in a row in all competitions without conceding. I think that run will end this week, and I will go for a 2-1 to Posh.
Interesting. As all of these are. I feel like I say that after every single prediction because we'll have to wait and see. Birmingham, who for once don't find themselves top of the table, they face Northampton side, who are, I suppose, sort of doing all right. Their form's sort of recovered a little bit. They're just fairly a bit this year, kind of not where I think they're kind of where we expected them to be. I think fans would have probably wanted them a couple of places higher, but that part of the league is quite tight. I'm not really sure about this one because it kind of feels like a game that I suppose any Birmingham game is primed for a bit of an upset, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think Northampton are one of them teams that don't beat the teams you don't expect them to beat, but beat the teams you expect them to beat. They're nothing sensational. They're just kind of there at the moment. They've got a lot of injuries, but there will be some pressure on John Brady after last week, after losing in the derby to Kettering in the FA Cup.
Yeah, 100%.
And then some of his comments, because I think a lot of their fans go on about, he moans about budgets and stuff like that. They made 2 signings, obviously, last week in Ayoma, who you know a bit about, and Martin Waghorn. An experienced striker, but again, he's not a goal scorer. But considering they lost Tom Eaves through injury, and they did have Tyler Roberts suspended at the time, it's a pretty sensible bit of business for a couple of months. Birmingham obviously drew their last game to Mansfield, and do sit second, but obviously they do have that game in hand. I did expect Birmingham to be a bit more prolific. I know they're the 3rd top scorers behind Wycombe and Peterborough, and they do near enough average 2 a game. But Wycombe have scored 31 goals, and they haven't got the names that Birmingham have.
Yeah, 100%.
That's not a criticism of Birmingham because they still won 9 of their 12 games, but it's just something that I thought I'd say. I think Birmingham will win convincingly, especially at home. We know how good they are at home. I am going, and I think they will score goals this week. I've gone for 4-0 to Birmingham.
Jesus. Yeah, I think Ioma's a good signing. I know he scored as we are recording this last night. I can't remember what the 4 times score was, but I know we got the first goal. But yeah, it's one of them that an upset wouldn't surprise me, especially given defeat last week to Kettering. It wouldn't surprise me if they bounce back. But Birmingham will get goals. I just don't think 4. I go 3-0, and then claim the victory if it's 2 or 1. On to the next game, Battle of the W's. This one, Wigan versus Wycombe. An interesting game, I suppose, as all of them are. When you kind of, it's very easy to tell a lot of these games. Wigan don't score, but they also don't concede. Versus a free scoring Wycombe side. This kind of has the ring of attack versus defence, if there ever was one. I suppose it's I think only Wrexham have conceded less off the top of my head. Than Wigan, but no side has scored more than Wycombe. So it is attack versus defence, isn't it? Yeah.
I think the alarming thing for Wigan is they've conceded 2 in their last 3 League One games. They kept a clean sheet against Carlisle last week, but they lost 2-0 to Cambridge, 2-1 to Mansfield, and 2-2 with Blackpool. So 6 goals in 3 games is slightly alarming for a team that were so solid, and it also lined up with me putting Sam Tickle in my fantasy EFL team, so that went rather well. I can't see. I know Wycombe have played midweek, but I can't see anything past a Wycombe win. I just think they're so good at the moment, Wycombe, and they've got the mojo, as I call it. Wycombe have disappointed me so far this season, of where they are sitting in 19th place with 14 points. They have disappointed me. I think Wycombe have just been absolutely sensational, and I think they will win 2-0.
Damn. That's exactly what I went for, because I can't see Wigan conceding more than 2, really. But again, do you know what? I'll go with 3-1 then. Maybe it is a bit more free scoring. Again, I think there's not really much to talk about here. Two sides that I suppose you can put an argument that Reading are on the verge of the playoffs, but 2 sides that I imagine will both be mid-table by the end of the season. Stevenage against Reading. I suppose the stats might argue that Stevenage are probably a bit worse than what their league position says, but I imagine they'll be mid-table by the end of the season, as will Reading. But Reading going to Stevenage. I kind of fancy Reading here. Obviously 3 wins and then a loss at their current form. Reading, though, 5th in the form guide. Stevenage down in 19th. That probably kind of puts into a bit more context. I'll back Reading here to get a 2-0 win.
Okay, I've gone the opposite end of the spectrum. I've gone for a 1-0 Stevenage win. While Stevenage are the lowest scorers in the division, they're quite decent at home, 4 wins and 3 defeats. Reading are really, really poor away from home. 1 win, 1 draw, and 4 losses, and 16 conceded in them 6 games as well. So
interesting.
That's why I've gone for 1-0 to Stevenage.
Let's wait and see. Crawley against Huddersfield, one side just in the relegation zone, one side just outside the playoffs. Crawley, obviously, like you say, their first clean sheet in midweek of the season, but Huddersfield, probably the biggest upset. I don't want to say the biggest upset, but one of the biggest in terms of the biggest name, I suppose, out of the FA Cup. To Tamworth, who I'd like to give a shout out to the Snowdome in the background. They do great kids' parties, as I experienced many times as a child. But yeah, this one, you kind of imagine Huddersfield, if they have that professionalism, they'll just get the job done. I kind of back them to win 2-0 here.
Okay, yeah, I've gone for 2-0. Obviously, we've discussed Crawley earlier. Huddersfield, expected points, they should be 3rd. They're literally on the dot for their expected goals and expected goals conceded. They have these tendencies, though, to dip into what they did last year in terms of they'll concede and they'll just collapse. There's no confidence. But if they get the first goal, they tend to go on to win. And I do back them to get the first goal and go on to win 3-0 against Crawley.
Next up then, Exeter against Charlton. Exeter 11th at the minute, back-to-back defeats though. Charlton 12th, so 11 versus 12th. They've got 3 draws in a row, unbeaten in 4. Your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think Exeter are going into the spell that we did expect them eventually to go into. They are a mid-table League One side that were exceeding expectations before their 2 defeats. Charlton, I don't really know what to think of Charlton, to be honest. They're kind of... I still think they are where they deserve to be. Not because of the quality they've got in terms of the squad and the manager, but just because they can't score, first of all, and I've criticised them before for not being expansive enough. And defensively, while they are solid, they also have a tendency to just concede really soft, stupid goals. And an Exeter side who don't really create too many chances against a Charlton side who, again, don't really create too much. Like if we refer to my graph that I have in front of me, Charlton are mid-table in terms of attacking stats. They're 18th for expected goals. They're 22nd for shots. But against XG against them, they're 6th. They are really good defensively. So this could be do I think this will be a bit of a snooze fest? Yes, I do. 0-0.
No. Yeah, I've got 1-1 about this. I don't like predicting 0-0s because it means it'll be boring. So I'll go 1-1. And then 2 more games to go. Stockport against Bolton. This is 10th against 6th. Bolton back-to-back wins. Stockport defeat and a win in their last 2. Stockport, you think, kind of settling down into that inconsistency, promising, but I don't want to say not mature enough for League One, but you learn the leagues, so mature probably isn't the word, just not League One knowledgeable. I guess that's probably how you phrase it. Bolton, that kind of you mentioned that tactical tweak, it's kind of working. And this one, I kind of see it being a bit of an exciting draw. This one, but I'd go 1-1, an exciting 1-1, not a boring 1-1.
Yeah, Bolton's away form is the 4th best in the league, where Stockport's home form has them in 14th with 3 wins, 2 draws, and 2 defeats. Bolton, as you say, seems to be finding their groove a little bit now. They're in them playoff places now. The little tactical tweak we mentioned on the last podcast with a box behind the main striker seems to be paying off quite nicely. I think 2-1 to Bolton.
Interesting. You made your mind up there, didn't you? On the spot, because you
I did,
started
yes.
staying Stockport.
I did, yes.
And then finally, I believe Bristol Rovers saving the best till last. Obviously, Bristol Rovers against Lincoln City. They had that bit of a drop in form, didn't they? After that Birmingham defeat, Lincoln did, losing to Crawley, who they've now got in the next round of the FA Cup, which is not worrying at all. But back-to-back defeats. For Lincoln against the Bristol Rovers side who lost, win, loss, win, loss. So inconsistency, the name of the game again for Bristol Rovers, but I suppose that's kind of what you come to expect. But Lincoln, good side, especially on their travels. I would argue that this probably is Lincoln's. I don't want to say Lincoln's to lose because that's kind of arrogant, but I'd argue that it's probably a 2-0 Lincoln win.
Okay. Yeah,
if they've got any ambitions of being,
I would say,
this is the game they've got to be winning, surely.
Yeah, I would say the same. Bristol Rovers is the worst team at defending set pieces as well.
Yeah,
this season in terms of expected goals against from set pieces, and they're also the worst team in terms of expected goals against in the league, and they're the worst team in terms of expected points in the league. So there's all your stats for you on Bristol Rovers.
There you go. Well, that's it for the preview show. Remember to head downstairs, as they used to call it, below the video. Like and subscribers. Always trying to get to that next milestone, which I believe is 300 subscribers. Obviously, we'd love to get to 1,000 and beyond that. So recommend us to a friend and whatnot. If not, just follow us on X. And on TikTok at League One Lowdown on both of them. And we'll see you in the next podcast.